So today's session, I'll welcome you all again. It is one of our series on workshop on graduate applications in pure sciences. So let me take you to the outline of the presentation, the workshop, how it will work. So firstly, I'll tell you about Project EduAccess. We'll meet our amazing panelist. She'll give you the overview about the master's program, about the course structure, nomenclature. Um, we'll also talk about how to choose the country, how to choose the university, about the PhD programs, the course structures, nomenclatures, choosing the country and university, general prospects, general tips, and Q&A. So it's covering pretty much everything. So those of you who are already well versed about what Project EduAccess is, and those of you who are new, so Project EduAccess here, we know that access to higher education, leadership, professional opportunities is a privilege. Most of the people from marginalized communities are systematically denied, either through cost, information, or dispositional barriers. So what we do at Project EduAccess, it is a modest attempt to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing more of these barriers for marginalized communities, particularly in the global south. We aim to provide participation, representation of individuals from marginalized communities in higher education, and create avenues for personal, professional, and leadership development. And we do that by four key intervention. Firstly, by mentoring, counseling, and role modeling. Secondly, by information, advice, and guidance. Thirdly, by capacity building and leadership skills. And lastly, by evidence based advocacy. So this is the pretty much it about Project EduAccess. So now our panelist, and we have today with us we have Anwita Roy. She's a PhD in chemistry in medicine from University of Buffalo, the State University of New York, USA. She can speak in English, Bengali, and Hindi. Thank you so much, Anwita, for joining us. Now I'll hand over to you.
Hello, everybody. I hope I'm audible. I'm Anwita, and I'm a grad student in at the State University of New York. I'm doing a PhD in chemistry with specialization in medicinal aspect. So the overview of today's topic is going to be like intensely understanding the difference between a master's and a PhD program, and intensively focusing on the four natural sciences, that is physics, chemistry, math, bio. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So I have listed the general documents for admission, which is pretty much the same for any of the degrees that you applied to. The first is academic scores, can be in the form of transcripts or mark sheets. So it is basically the document that your university provides you with. Can be the semester grade sheet if it is a SEM-based university, can be the yearly mark sheet or a cumulative mark sheet that you will be getting towards the end of your bachelor's, you'll be getting towards the end of your master's. You would need work experience, not so much for the master's, but pretty much for the PhD because it's like more of a specialization. Can be anything. Again, it can be your bachelor's dissertation, master's dissertation, can be any internship, can be any industrial places that you have worked in. You need 3 letters of recommendation, and just one isn't enough. So like make sure you actually talk to your advisors before you apply, because like they generally have this 1 month of time frame to like submit the letter of recommendation on your behalf, which means that you will not be the person to upload your own letter of recommendations. So please make sure that you contact your advisors well before time, so that you can let them know that, hey, I'm applying to so and so university, and the university will send you an email to submit the recommendation on my behalf. So just choose any of your 3 advisor who know you personally. Can be your internship guide, can be your dissertation person, can be your course advisor, can be the HOD of your department, anybody basically. Next, you would need the 1,000-word SOP, the statement of purpose, which is of course like outlines why you are a good fit for the degree program, what have you done before, and how does those interests basically transfer to the skills that you will be learning, or why you'd be a good fit or addition to the lab that you're coming to, the university that you'd be attending. You would be needing an up-to-date curriculum vitae, that is CV, We'll talk more about this a little later. You'd need the proof of English language proficiency. So here's the catch. Most universities, and I mean 98% of the university, will require you to submit IELTS or TOEFL or Duolingo or IBT. Make sure that you are preparing yourself well in advance for these tests. What is the reason? Because these are really costly. So you cannot like sit through it for another time because it's a monetary issue. And the second thing is that you would need these scores, and you would generally need an overall band of 6.5. So like if you do not know what an overall band is, you can always ask me and I'm happy to explain that to you. Some universities will ask for a GRE, some university will not ask for a GRE. So GRE is not a mandatory requirement, it just depends on the university that you will be attending. Of course, extracurriculars, if you have it, co-curriculars, if you have it, make sure you have a passport, because in the application document, you will have to scan the front and back pages of your passport. And also you will need your passport if you're going for the IELTS exam. At least that's what I had to bring as a proof of verification. They don't accept voter ID or Aadhaar card. It might be different for different places, but that was the rule for my year for IELTS exam. Additionally, some universities might ask you to identify potential supervisor, not so much for the master's, but to some extent for a PhD degree, you might have to like explicitly write their names in your SOP, or you have to write a research statement if the university has an option for that, where you have to highlight why you want to join that university and how the lab that you are focused on is basically the one that you want, or how your work that you have done in the past really transfers to the lab that you want to go to. So these are basically optional requirements. Can we move over? Okay. So for master's courses, it is generally 1 to 2 years. If you're doing from the UK, it's generally 1 year master's. If you're doing it from the US, Australia, they are generally 2 years of master's coursework. Depending on the kind of degree you're pursuing, it might be divided into 1 year of extensive research, 1 year of coursework, or half year of extensive research, half year of coursework, or just full year of research or coursework. It just depends on the kind of courses that you're going for. At least in chemistry, for example, in UK, you have a choice of MRes versus MSc. So MSc is for 1 year. It has coursework, so 60% coursework, 40% dissertation. For MRes, that is Masters of Research in Chemistry, that is also a master's degree that is extensively focused on research. So like depending on the coursework that you apply to, it might change. But overall, for any of the streams that you apply to, it should be the same. Again, like I said, thesis it depends on the kind of courses that you're applying to. If it's an intensive research program, you will be expecting a detailed thesis. You would be assigned a project. You have to independently carry out the project. If it is just a master's and MSc, you might have 60% coursework and 40% thesis. It's just how it is. You will find more specific criteria or requirements for the degree on the specific university course page. So make sure you read those documents or read that like course overview carefully. Can we move on? So like I said, it's MSc, common in UK, Europe, Australia, and US. MRes is common in UK. That's really nice, actually, something I really appreciate about the MRes degrees, because it is research intensive and it helps you step forward into a PhD program without any hassle. So if you're sure you're going to do a PhD, an MRes is going to be a good choice. And sometimes they also give you Masters of Arts for computational theoretical physics, for math, for chemistry, which does not have any experimental or lab work. That's also common in US. Can we move over, please? So like, how do you choose the country? So this basically depends on the kind of location you want to go to. So like US generally offers extensive selection in terms of research funding. UK has shorter programs, like I said, with 1 year of rigorous training, can be either coursework or can be research. You have the MRIS degree specific to UK only. Canada is very much similar to US. Um, like for I'm not very sure about Australia, but I from the time that I can think of, they have MSc degrees, and I think it's Australia specifically that has the 60-40 division that you have to take 60% of coursework and 40% of your thesis. But like if you negotiate with your like your advisor, whoever you have an eye for, they might make it to 50-50 or 40-60, depending on like how good you are and stuff like that. For Europe, it's mostly general. You have good academics in Europe for sure. You have good academics in Germany. If you're applying for physics, you have good academics in Switzerland for physics. You have good opportunities in France. Italy is very, very, very famous for computational chemistry. So like if you're looking for computational modeling stuff, molecular biology stuff like that, then the El Sayed TIHC is a very good option in Italy, the Theoretical Institute for Computational Chemistry. Then again, the way you're going to choose the university would completely depend on you, but here are some general criteria, like what sort of a program specialization do you want to go to. Again, you will find details of the programs on the specific university's website. So like, for example, if you apply for a certain course, like an MSc in chemistry and MRIS in chemistry, then how do you know that they offer different kind of learning environments? So if you like look at the degree requirements, that is, you will find a website for the coursework highlighting the degree requirements, that whatever courses or whatever work you need to get offered the degree, MS, whatever. So if you read through that, you'll be able to see that they are highlighting certain courses. For example, they might highlight a course in radioactivity, in, I don't know, like something in math I cannot think about. For example, abstract algebra, something in like molecular modeling, things like that. Maybe if those courses really interest you, that's a good degree for you. So like, just read the course specific website. They will be highlighting all the courses that they will be offering you for that fall or spring intake to whichever program, whichever university, whichever country. Select the courses that you feel is relevant for you. Select the courses that you feel is going to help you improve you, or courses that fascinates or interests you. That is a very good way to understand what kind of specialization, what kind of degree you want to pursue for. Again, look for universities with strong rankings. So you can do that by Googling the university's name on THE, the QS ranking website, or if you're looking for the US best ranking university, there's a website for that. You can just fill in the university's name, the degree that you're applying to, and the specialization, chemistry, physics, math, bio, whatever, and they should be able to give you the hierarchy of ranking or the hierarchy of the department based on whatever data they have. Check for faculty expertise. So like, not all universities will have faculty, like all the best faculty, which means that you have to also like really do a little bit of research about the supervisors. Check for their website. You will find the supervisors publication on the website of this same university. So just look for their publication, check for recent publications, check for what kind of work they do, what has been the trend line of publication. Is it like, does the supervisor publish each year? How frequently they publish, things like that. Read through their academic documents and stuff like that. It helps you understand what sort of work you want to do, because at the master's or PhD fields, it's a little bit different than the bachelor's courses because it's more specialized. So your advisor will expect you to know the kind of work that you're doing. So just have a feel for it. Like, you don't have to like write an extensive essay on it, but if you know it, it's going to help you in the long run when you are admitted to the university. Consider specific research facilities with like that's applicable to like people who are doing a physics degree, doing a bio degree. I wouldn't be able to highlight very extensively on these topics like the CERN fellowship or the Wellcome Sanger Institute fellowship, but like you probably will be knowing better than me. But like consider these fellowships because they are just not only prestigious, but they also have very good projects. So like pretty much be aware of these things. And like I said, facilities, make sure that you are in an established lab. Just don't like walk in and then decide which lab to join in, because that sort of like makes you appear unprepared. So that's the thing. And we move forward. Okay. So the PhD coursework is also kind of similar, except that the time is doubled than the master's degrees. So generally, we are looking at a time frame of 3 to 5 years. If you're in Europe, it's going to be somewhere around 3.5, 4 years maximum. If you're in US, where I am, it's going to be 5 years at least, depending on like the kind of project that you're doing. Again, you will have coursework. So now the coursework depends on the kind of university that you again go to. So for example, my university had 1 year of coursework. University of Rochester doesn't have like coursework, but they have a cumulative exam of whatever you studied in your master's, and based on that they had assigned the coursework to students. So that's the criteria for coursework in terms of PhD degree. It's different for different universities, so you can always email the graduate program coordinator if you want to have an idea about it, or you can like read through the website like I said, and it should be able to give you an idea. Or you can do the third thing, which I did. You can navigate with the grad students of the university on LinkedIn, and that is really, really, really helpful because I did that. So like that gives us a clear understanding as to what we are looking at. Really, thesis is absolutely mandatory for a PhD, unlike masters, which is specific to the university, specific to the course. But for PhD, theses are mandatory. So you will be writing a thesis regardless of whichever field you join, whichever stream you join, whichever advisory you join. It's just going to be a specific thesis based on the kind of work that you are doing. Unlike masters, PhDs are fully funded, which means you do not have to apply for external scholarships. The scholarships for at the master's level are really competitive, which means that you have to fully fund yourself. So if the course is asking you to pay like 23,000 CAD, USD, pounds, whatever, it's from your own pocket, or it's from a loan, or you have to apply for competitive funding like Chevening, like Fulbright, like Rhodes, Oxford, like these scholarship, basically Commonwealth. But for US, the university will be funding you. So like for example, my university funds me, which means that if I get a PhD degree, it is going to be fully funded unless in the offer letter it is mentioned otherwise, that the funding is competitive, the funding is something, the funding depends on ABC. So unless and until it is explicitly mentioned on the program website, all PhDs are funded. At least in the US, they are all funded. Can we move over? Okay. So finding a supervisor, here's where the homework becomes mandatory, because like pretty much not so much for the master's, but definitely very much for the PhD degree, you have to understand the kind of work you like. So you have to Google or you have to research your supervisors carefully. Why? Because at this point of time, your supervisor will know very clearly who has done the homework, who hasn't. So make sure you're actually taking the time. I know it's a little challenging because it's not always going to be the work that you have done so far. It's not going to be exactly the work that you have done so far. So there will be some disparity, dissimilarity, but that's okay. But as long as you know the kind of work is going on in that lab, the kind of work your research supervisor engages in, you pretty much know what sort of labs to join. And the reason is because, at least in my university, people really struggle to find the lab. And even if they do find a lab, they do not stick for long because they are not familiar with research. So here's what I would tell you, that make sure before you submit an application, or even if you get an offer, make sure you are actually Googling or you're actually reading their publication, because your supervisor will be very familiar whether you have done your homework or not. So make sure that you are doing that really correctly. Nomenclature would be PhD, that is Doctor of Philosophy, in any of the fields that you have, or a DPhil, which is equivalent to PhD. It is provided by University of Oxford. I don't think any US university provides DPhil, honestly, at least not for chemistry. Can we move forward? Okay. Again, choosing the country is going to be your decision, but here are some general insights. Like I said, US gives you good research facility, and I'm pretty sure every other country is going to give you good research facility. But the great thing about US is like they will be giving you a visa for 5 years altogether, so you don't have to like appear in front of the visa officer after every year. That is actually a good thing, because I have a friend in Italy who is working at the Computational Chemistry Institute, and he has to apply for visa each and every year, and sometimes the visa gets delayed, so that's an additional headache. Not that I'm asking you not to apply to Europe, but these are just a couple of pointers to look out for. That's it. UK has shorter PhD duration, so unlike US, the PhD duration is around 4, 5, 6 years, somewhere around that range. UK has 1 year lesser. That's what I am aware of. Canada is very similar to UK, although it's more collaborative. So like Ottawa and Toronto, they have a collaboration in terms of chemistry programs. So like you have some sort of an interdisciplinary inter-lab experience if you're interested in that. PhDs in Australia, I think it's also around somewhere around 3 to 5 years, if I can remember correctly. And for Europe, like I said, it just depends on the university you're attending and the funding. So mostly PhDs in Europe extend up to 3.5 years, according to the stuff that I can remember. So it's always like somewhere close to 4 years. It's never exceeding 4 years. You have funding specifically mentioned in your offer letter that you'd be funded, say, from 2026 to 2030, something like that. Unlike US, where they do not mention when your funding is going to end, because it's obvious that your supervisor is going to fund you, and therefore it's their decision how long they want to basically keep you. Okay, so once again, choosing the program is very similar. At the PhD level, it's even more intricate, it's even more hitting the bull's eye. Make sure that, again, you are selecting a university where you like the work of the faculty. So most people choose universities first and faculty second. Here's where you guys make a mistake. So make sure you're choosing the faculty first and the university second. Why? Because you can choose an amazing university, having an amazing degree program, having an amazing campus life, but at the PhD, you would be working in the lab for 5 years. So for my case, I go and work Monday to Friday, like 8 hours a week. So that's in total 40 hours per week, can be 45 depending on the kind of work that I'm looking at. So think about it. If you are in the lab 8 hours a day and you do not like the faculty, or you do not like the research, it might not just be a rift between you and the faculty, but you do not like the kind of research that is going on, will you be able to survive? That's a good question. So make sure you're choosing the faculty first and the university second. But how will I get the faculty? Of course, you need to understand which, of course, you can start Googling universities whichever you have in mind. But also at the same time, once you start Googling faculties, you will see allied professors. Maybe they worked on a collaborative project. Maybe you found their names on the reference sections of the publications. Maybe just go from there. So make sure you are very confident with the faculty before selecting the university, because at the PhD level, it's really, really, really important. Supervision mentorship, like I said, the best way to do this, at least the way I did it, was I directly searched the universities, and then I navigated the top 500 QS universities. I sort of then typed in R1 university. I'm going to come into that in a little bit. Then the kind of work that I'm interested in. So like each university has a field of specialization, has a set of faculties like the tenure track professor, the distinguished professor, whatever their titles are. Pretty much I just briefly skimmed over it, and then I sort of started to be more concise based on the kind of publication, based on the professors' names that I saw. I started reading their journals, I started reading their articles, and the best thing that I did honestly was I actually went to their specific website and I sort of um, saw the list of people working in the lab. So the current grad students, here is why it is very important, is because when you look at the current grad students, you can also find them on LinkedIn, because like all of us, the grad students everywhere, we always have a LinkedIn account, because pretty much we will be applying for jobs at some point of time. So it makes sense to have a LinkedIn account. And people in LinkedIn are generally helpful. So if you write a certain query, if you introduce yourself and sort of write a certain query, they would be like replying back. The grad students will be replying back. The professors are a little hard to approach. So from the grad students, you can understand the kind of work that is going on, what sort of publication expectations are happening, what sort of work life balance does the lab has. So these questions, I get it, are a little difficult to ask a supervisor on your first sitting, because like you know nothing about that person and you might feel shy, and I completely understand it, because I also did not go up and ask the same questions. But I asked a grad student. So they gave me all information that I felt was intrinsic in understanding or in like submitting my application. So that's a real game changer. So like ask for grad students, ask them intrinsic details, and of course you can always email the professor about more specific details about the project that you'd be working in, the questions that you have from a publication that they have recently um, submitted for manuscripts, things like that. Funding and scholarships in US, like I said, you have it's a fully funded thing. So like you don't really have a timeline of funding. So as long as your supervisor wants to keep you in the lab, you will be having funding in terms of GA-ship, in terms of RA-ship, in terms of TA-ship, that is teaching assistantship, research assistantship, and then some people also work at the instrument center assisting other students. So you will be having a monthly stipend, which is going to be the funding. Sometimes you might apply for external fellowship, but I think that's mostly specific to Europe. External fellowship is not as mandatory in the US as it's going to be in the Europe, honestly. In terms of research facilities, again, ensure that you have like good labs. And how do you know that? You know that when you actually look up the department website, when you talk to people about maybe grad students in the lab, grad students out of the lab, to have a solid, clear opinion on the supervisor, on the lab, the kind of facilities they have. So like that is pretty much mentioned on the department website. So you will pretty much understand how it goes. So here are a couple of examples. If you're like looking for like Stanford has a good option for condensed matter physics, Edinburgh has sustainable chemistry, Helsinki has climate biology, and things like that. So these are very specific. So like if you're interested, these are just to help you, guide you to channelize your how to pick your specialization. Just one question: what interests you the most? So like if you know what interests you the most, you are good to go. That's the only thing that I'm going to tell you. And we move forward. Career prospects, you can be absorbed in academia, you can be a professor, a lecturer, a professor, a full professor, depending on the qualifications that are required. You can join industry, pharmaceutical, Pfizer, Johnson, AstraZeneca, Ventura, whichever, energy, Tesla, UX researchers, tech farms, if you are more of the computational background, government and NGOs, of course, NASA, WHO, Red Cross, environmental agency, anywhere. You can also start up companies like my PI, Professor Morrow. She has her own company focusing on MRI contrast agents. That's my work. So why not give it a try? Moving on. So here are a couple of my tips that I sort of assembled over the years. So I'm going to walk you through the best way to craft an SOP, the best way to craft a CV, how to find the right university, and how to pick the right labs. This, it might just be a continuation of what I have said before, but let's just dive into it. So make sure your SOP is precise and concise. So please do not have an extensive introduction stating, like, oh, when I was a kid, I was fascinated by the anomalous expansion of water, which is the reason why I decided to, like, blah blah blah. Like, don't start it off that way. I know it's emotional. I know an SOP is a good, like, it's a good platform to air your sentiments, but it should be relevant sentiments. Like, I did something, and that's where I did an experiment. I set up an experiment, and I was expecting a certain result, but I got something different. That is what sparked my interest. So, like, you had a goal in mind, and you were trying to bridge a gap. So that gap that you encountered is gonna set the ball rolling in terms of crafting an SOP. So just make sure that you are being precise and concise, and make sure you're writing a relevant story. So for example, like I said, if you for example, if you had a coursework, right, that you had taken at some point of time, and you saw that there was like a portion of the coursework that was very interesting, that you had, that they mentioned briefly or they mentioned extensively, but you still had a lot of whys around that coursework. That's a very good way to start as to what intrigued you to, like, take up, say, a computational chemistry degree or a molecular modeling degree or something like that. So make sure your work experiences, your projects, your coursework offer those transferable skills that is going to match to the work the research supervisor or your potential supervisor is doing. So this is one of the best ways to craft an SOP. Make sure you're not using quotes anywhere. So, like, a lot of people start their SOPs like with a quote from Shakespeare. Don't do that. Honestly, that's just thrown in the trash. So make sure you're not using the quote. Make sure you're not using quotes anywhere, because anybody can Google quotes. So, like, at this point of time, you're probably losing a whole sentence because you are quoting William Wordsworth Longfellow when you don't have to actually do that. Make sure you are staging and voicing your opinions, because the space is going to be limited. It's going to be 1,000-word SOP, which is somewhere around 1.5 to 1.75 pages. So it's not even 2 pages, and you have a lot to actually fit in. Make sure you're following the STAR approach. You probably know it, the situation, task, action, result approach, where you highlight the situation, say the name of the project. I was given the work, or I undertook a project title, this and that. My tasks were so and so. The actions or the outcomes of the project, maybe I did a reusability study, I did something that upscaled a catalysis experiment, something like that. And what was the result? That I was, for example, able to make sure, like, able to purify water, or something like that. So make sure that you are giving your write outs in the STAR approach. That way, the reader or your committee members sort of have a feel for exactly what you're writing. But make sure that these projects are really one para long. So make sure you're not, like, continuing to write the project for like 3 pages or something like that. Just write it concisely, precisely in a paragraph using the STAR approach. Please do not compare SOPs. I've seen a lot of people do that, but please understand that that just gives you anxiety, because intrinsic details of every person is different. So, like, you are an amazing person, you're an amazing student, so just don't feel bad if their SOP sounds more fun than you. It is just that they have written it, they have staged it in a way a little, which sounds a little better than you. But it's not that it's your fault that it doesn't sound as fun as theirs. So please don't compare SOPs. Instead, ask your friends, mentors, teachers, professors, parents to proofread it, because it's really not good to have grammatical or spelling errors in SOPs. Like, the people who, like, really go through that, your grad school advisors, they don't really like it. They consider it as a sloppy work, quote unquote. So please proofread multiple times for any grammatical or spelling errors. Make sure, I forgot to mention this, but you're not using Chat GPT, because I know we are in the habit of using AI tools, but honestly, guys, are like, at least my university, and I'm pretty sure every university all across the world, including India, they can check for software or these plagiarisms. And once they figure out that this is a plagiarized version, an AI or somebody else has written it, it's just a straight up rejection. So please don't ever do that. Do not use AI tools. um this is basically, I have like assembled all my experiences of my PhD program in this link. So I have two posts on PhD application, how to craft a PhD application, and some important interview tips and tricks. So you can like find it on my LinkedIn wall. It's on my name and it's available to everybody. So there are no subscriptions or anything required, honestly. Can we move forward? Same thing for a CV. Academic CVs are generally 1 to 3 pages long, should be written in reverse chronology, which means that, for example, if you're applying for PhD, say you're applying for PhD and you have a degree until master's, it's going to be master's, bachelor's, and then your school, your 10th and 12th, if you want to mention it. Do not write the other way. So similarly, if you're applying for a master's course, it's going to be bachelor's and then your school degree or whatever. So make sure it's written in reverse chronology. Same for your projects or internships. Say, for example, you did a project in spring of 2023, then you did one in spring of 2024, and then you are currently doing a project right now, that is December of 2024. The way to craft it is going to be December 24, followed by spring 24, followed by spring 23. I did not complete the project yet. Yes, I know you haven't completed the project yet, but when you tell them that you are in the process of doing a project as of now, it just gives you a greater leverage because it's recent. So they like recent work. Again, you probably know this. So it's like your educational history, honors, awards, work experience, co-curricular, extracurricular, language proficiency, and make sure you actually are having details of 2 supervisors. So these 2 supervisors are basically the supervisors who will be on like writing your recommendation. So like you can pick any of the 2 supervisors out of the 3. Again, this is one of the links that I have attached in the slides. Again, you can go through it. It's up on my wall in LinkedIn under my name. No subscriptions required, nothing. Can we move forward? Okay. How to find the right university? Here's the thing. So I was talking about R1 versus R2 universities. So R1 are research intensive universities. They have a lot of funding and they are specifically built for research. So understand the difference between R1 and R2 university. How do you find it? You can just Google R1, R2 universities, at least for the US, and you will be finding the list of universities which are R1 and which are R2. Alternatively, if you have a university in mind, you can type it is so and so university and R1 university, and it is going to be there right in front of you up on Google. Make sure the kind of work you want to engage in. Of course, you would need that because you have to select a supervisor, so you have to be very specific about the work that you'd like. Make sure that you're checking for department specific and overall ranking, which means that you need to, rankings are sometimes not that important, but pretty much a good ranking somewhere in between or above maybe 300 to 500 or 1 to 500 is a good range, honestly. So just have a feel for it. Of course, if you have a specific advisor in a university ranked 501 and you have a good rapport, you really love their work, absolutely go for it. There is no harm. Select at least 3 potential supervisor, because in the PhD SOP you have to like specify why you want the university and the names of 3 potential supervisor. Why can I not select 1 supervisor? Because most of the times people don't end up with that 1 supervisor. So it's going to be competitive. So make sure you are mentioning 3 supervisor. What happens if I don't have any other supervisor in mind? If I just want to work with that 1 supervisor, good. Apply to the university. It's excellent if you get that supervisor, but also apply to other university where you have 3 supervisors matching the kind of work that you do, so that if there's a tie, you can always select this university where you have 3 supervisor, all of them equally important, equally relevant to your field. Make sure you're navigating the PI's work and sort of match with your interest. Check the kind of funding the lab has. Is it granted by NSF? Is it granted by like DSF? Is it like who basically funds the lab? Is it the university funding? What is the position of the professor? Is he a tenure track? Is he a distinguished professor? Does they have any auxiliary funding, NIH funding, etc., etc.? Make sure you're checking for established labs, because generally what happens is if a professor is really new, you really don't know the kind of work that is going on in the lab. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad lab, never think of it this way, but if you want to do your homework in terms of you want to be very sure about this lab that you want to join in, you will not have grad students or immediate people helping you understand the kind of work environment. And finally, a PhD is worth 5 years of effort. So please, please, please do your own research. Please make sure that you are not joining a lab, not joining a university just because your mentors recommended it. This is basically what I have stated before, that you read their publication, network with the students of the same group. You will find their details on the lab website or on LinkedIn. Ask about that group to other students. So like, for example, if you want to join my group, you can ask me, but you can also ask somebody from the other department, or sorry, not from the other department, but in the same department of a different lab, for example, about my group, so that you for sure know that I am not lying, because it's always good to double check. It's not a bad thing if you double check. It's always good to be extra cautious. It doesn't hurt you. Be honest with your expectations when reaching out. Here's a couple of pointers. How many holidays do I get per year? What is the work type preference? Is it mandatory to come on weekends? Do I have to work all weekends? Do I have to work late nights? Do I have to turn up 8 a.m. in the morning and go to bed at 12 a.m. the night before? What kind of projects do I have in mind? Is the PI available all the time? Is the PI hands off? Is the PI hands on? Does the PI meet with me frequently? Does the PI guide me, or the PI has grad students who is gonna guide me? So please ask these questions to yourself. Please ask these questions to the people that you navigate and connect with, because these are important. For example, it's nice to go on weekends, but is it nice to go on all weekends? Quite not, because the burnout in PhD is really too much. So it's not gonna improve the efficiency if you're gonna go on all weekends. So, but of course, if you wanna go, please go ahead. But like, ask these questions to yourself. For me, I don't really work on weekends. Of course, I would work on some weekends, but I wouldn't go on all weekends. My PI, she does not have any fixed time for the lab. We have to work 8 hours a day, but it's not like from 9 to 5, although I stick to 9 to 5 because it's more convenient. But I have people in my lab who would come at 12 and leave at 8 p.m. But my PI doesn't mind. If you have any projects in mind, what kind of projects can you work on, things like that. And then how frequently does the PI meet you? Because sometimes PIs are hard to hard to approach, in the sense they do not come in labs. So you probably meet them once a month. And this is a personal opinion from me, but if you meet your PI very like seldomly, let's say, if you don't meet them frequently, that's not a good thing, because you don't have any so it works on a positive feedback mechanism. So you have some updates, you go tell your PI, they help you understand the caveat, the problem in your experiments. But if you don't meet your PI, if you have to write extensive mails and they will be replying you back after a week or two, of course, if you are very confident, you can go ahead. But I generally prefer PIs who I can meet every day, meet frequently. That helps me understand that whether I'm on the right track, and these meetings actually prepare me for my qualifying exams or my PhD defense exams, because these brainstorming sessions are very, very important. So just ask these questions and then go for it. I think that's all for me. So if you have any questions, I can take
Thank you
them.
so much, Anwita. It was
Of
so wholesome, and I think you explained everything in such an extensive way. It was commendable. So,
course.
it's open up. The floor is open for questions. Please feel to ask questions. You can just directly unmute yourself, raise hands, unmute yourselves, or just put the questions in the chat.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm Atif Sayaf. So I have completed my master's in earth sciences. Then I do have a PG diploma
Oh,
in remote sensing engineers. Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, you are. Please go
Yes,
ahead.
yes, ma'am. So I recently applied to different universities in Norway and Denmark and Finland, mostly related to remote sensing applications. So
Mhm.
most of them, like all of them, I got a rejection. Like some I attended 4 interviews. So in that also I got rejected. So I was a bit confused, like where I lack myself. So in 2 positions I was a bit confident, but I think like they already have someone in mind. I don't know actually what is the reason. So then like I haven't applied for US specifically. So I have some questions. That is, how frequent? Like you mentioned about the Google Scholar, like how to find the supervisor, right? So in the finding the supervisor, how can we know like they have the funding right now, and how frequent they publish the work? That I couldn't figure it out while having in the I mean looking into the Google Scholar. And I mean, which factor is important while choosing a supervisor? So after that, I have some more questions. So
Okay.
that is related to like doing I mean PhD in different countries. Which country would be better in my field? And I do have a questions about US specifically. So
Okay.
that is okay. You can answer this thing, and I will ask again. That
Yeah,
would be
maybe,
good.
yeah, just ask one by one so that I can remember your queries correctly. So, um, if you, so you, ResearchGate, Google Scholars, they would have the list of publications that anybody is publishing. So like for example, if you like look up the website of my professor Janet Morrow, she will have an extensive, so like if you simply Google Janet Morrow on Google, you will see her designation obviously, and you will see the list of publication on ResearchGate or Google Scholars. But if you cannot find them, that's okay. You can go to the university website, so University at Buffalo, search up her name, and you should be able to see all her publications. So the way you understand that if a publication is new and old is based on the year. So like you will see the every publication will have the year in bold and italics. So like 2022, 2023, 2024. um so that's the way how you understand whether the publication is up to date or whether it is maybe lagging behind or something. But you can always say, for example, if you do not find, you could not find a professor, you could not find their latest publication, and the publication that you see is somewhere in 2019, for example, hypothetically, argument's sake, you can read up that publication maybe, and all you can do is maybe read up the publication, maybe have a couple of questions if you have any in mind, and maybe you can directly email the supervisor asking that, hey, sort of I read your publications, and these are the three key points, three questions that I had in mind reading your publication. Will it be okay if you can arrange a Zoom call, if you arrange a meet, or if you can reply back, something like that? They can or cannot, may not reply back. But this is why I said that sometimes professors are hard to approach. But if they have a group website, like all US university have a group website. So I'm not sure about Norway and Denmark specifically because I have never applied there. So the only places I have applied to was Canada, US, UK, and Australia. But I specifically applied to US for my PhD. For everything else, for every other country, I was looking for masters. So when I did that, I just could follow the group website and I could see the number of people working in the lab. Did all of them have LinkedIn? Will all of them reply back? No. But you, when you actually Google them, you can actually see that this is the same person on the group website, maybe the picture that they have or something like that. So that's how you can connect with grad students and you can ask that, hey, what's going on? What's the recent publication? Things like that. Because it's easy for grad students to reply back to a current or a prospective grad students than a professor, because PIs, they get several emails in a week. So it makes sense, because I have faced rejections myself too when I was applying for masters. So it's highly likely that they are not replying back to you because they have a better candidate in mind, or they missed your email, things like that. But did you like hit them a follow-up email asking why? I mean, say for example, if you hit an email today and you do not hear back after 7 days, did you like sort of hit them with a follow-up email that, hey, in continuation to my previous email, like something like that? Have you done that?
No, ma'am. I have emailed some professors not in the US. So I mean, I don't know. Like, I couldn't do. I mean, list out the professors, especially in US. So
Mm-hmm.
I usually apply through like in JobNorge website. Like it's to already. I mean, funded positions, like already structured PhD positions for 3 years or something with already a title. So I didn't do, I mean, enough research on the US especially. Then you have mentioned about the, I mean, RES program, like research master's program. Like I sometimes feel like I'm not, I mean, good enough to go to directly for a PhD. I think like it's better to improve my research skills by applying to research masters. But is there any like universities there, like or countries there, they will provide like scholarship for masters in research? And could you just elaborate about it?
So for masters in research, I think that UK is the only country that offers an MRes degree in anything. At least that's the case in chemistry, if I remember it correctly. So um, all the universities that I had applied to back in 2020 for my master's degree, when I was applying for a master's program, they did not have any scholarships. The professors always asked me to apply for external scholarships, external funding, like I said, Chevening, Commonwealths, the Science, then Rhodes, Oxford, this and that, like arbitrary scholarships, like NSF, in luck, she's the Sunny scholarship. So such kind of scholarship, like they really did not have any scholarships for the master's degree. Now I'm not sure for art sciences, so because I'm from chemistry, so I would not know intensively about your degree. So pretty much these caveats you have to like sort of fill out yourself, because like from what I know at the master's level, UK does not, no countries, not just UK, no, none of the countries, at least for chemistry, they provide scholarships. So it's always your own pocket expenditure. So like you have to acquire the funds yourself.
Sorry
About
to
the country.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you here. We have a detailed guide apart from what Anwita mentioned. It was really amazing. We have You can access, as she said, it's your like you need to do a bit of homework. We have a detailed guide. Like you can find the link that I pasted on Project EduAccess, or there are detailed workshops on masters as well. So you might find them helpful too. Feel free to ask.
Okay, my further question was about the country which I choose. Like, which country would be giving more financially good and also research support and for I mean funding for attending conference and publication. Which country would be better?
So So all countries are good, honestly. Now, coming to the stipend, US has good stipends, and the amount on your reflected on your I-20 appears more is because the living expenditures in US is extremely high. So every country, every place, every state, every zone has their own stipend, which means that University at Buffalo has a set stipend, which is absolutely different from University of Rochester, which is just um, like the city right across to Buffalo, is different from Hamilton, is different from NYU, is different from California, is different from Florida. Why? Because each of these states, each of the cities, each of these zones have different living expenditures. So the stipend is tailored accordingly. In US, you don't have public transport. So it's mandatory for students to buy a car. So that is why the stipend is a little higher than UK or Europe because you have good public transports there. So the stipend, you don't have to immediately come in and buy a car. So every university, every place, every PhD program has a stipend which is tailored to fit the students' needs. They have done their review. Who has done it? I don't know, but like it's good enough for you to survive really well. So like it's not like you don't have to bring money from home or anything like that. My friend who lives in France, my friend who lives in Italy, they don't have the same amount as me, but they live well because they have better public transport. We don't have better public transport. Food is much cheaper in the Europe or in the UK than it is in the US. So pretty much that's how it works. So wherever you are, the stipend is gonna be fine. The stipend, I wouldn't like think too much about the stipend. Of course, if you have a stipend in mind, sure you can like navigate and apply to places like that, but pretty much stipend shouldn't be a problem. In terms of funding, most urban universities, like I said, has good funding because they are built to have good funding. So they are all funded by the government, NSF, NIH, things like that, at least for America. And I'm sure that's the same for every other country too. So this is my take on the funding that you are asking. So again, like I said, check for established labs. So like you will be seeing a lab on the university on the department website, so you can pretty much read through their publication, and towards the end of the publication you will be seeing that this project is funding by the NSF, this project was funded by the NIH. So if you see those lines, so you pretty much know that the project is funded by NIH, NSF. So these are specifically mentioned in the document, in the manuscript that the professor uploads, like, or the research paper that they have. Some professors also sort of mention it specifically on their group website that my group is funded by NSF, my group is funded by NIH, things like that. So you will be seeing these words a lot of times. So that's how you understand whether it is funded by like which agency, which government, which private agencies. If nothing works, you can always reach out to the professor, you can always reach out to the grad student, and they should be able to explain this in detail. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Mashra, man. Then about I haven't applied for the US, especially I haven't cold emailed professors in the US. Right now, I don't think. Is it a good time to like now? I think like which time would be better? Like, is it? I mean, the current application period is over or not? Like, if is there in still time to apply for this intake, or then while writing the email, like which I mean, method would be better? Like, should I mention I read your paper and I'm interested in this topic, or should I just simply, you know, more specific? Should I specifically ask questions about research topics, or should I just mention about my own like my own experience and attaching my CV? So, do you have any
So,
recommendations for applications into the US, especially cold email?
so US does not require cold emailing. It's only Europe that requires cold emailing. US has you apply. So just like the admission process in India, it's exactly the same for US. It's the same for Canada. So you don't write cold emails at all. You just apply directly through the program website. You will have the button apply now. That's it. If you are genuinely interested in a lab, maybe you can email the professor, you can cold email the professor, but nobody that I know, at least me, myself, and people that I know, my friends, we never really cold emailed. We just directly applied through the program website, and that's it. So US does not require any cold emails. Cold emails are only specific to UK and Europe because they have admissions on rolling basis. That's what they call. But for US, it's very specific. So if you're looking for fall of any year, the say fall of 25 means that the application deadline closes on December 15th and the application starts at around September 1st. So September 1st to December 15, 2024 is the window for you to apply and get a place for fall of 2025. Again, these are mentioned on the program website itself, like the application procedure. If a university is specifically asking you to send an email, it will also be mentioned on the university website. But in my understanding, at least in my experience, I have never seen that. They always accept applications around that window, September 1st to December 15th of 2024. But you can still check universities if you have in mind. For sure, my university has closed their portal, so UB does not accept any application beyond December 1st or December 15th. But there might be other universities where you might have places, might have positions vacant, which might be accepting applications still. So if you have such universities in mind, please go ahead and do that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Of course.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering questions in an extensive way. I don't think so. We have any further questions. If any of you want to ask questions, like feel free. And otherwise, I also pasted a link wherein you can find all the resources and recording of this meeting as well on the YouTube channel of Project EduAccess. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much. There's a question.
Yeah. Should we apply to universities after the priority deadlines, or is it better not to apply even if the deadline is 15 days later? So priority deadline. So you have two deadlines. You have the early bird deadline, which is somewhere in October or sometime in the middle of or towards the first week of November. And you have the final deadline on December 1st or December 15th. So the early bird deadline gets you leverage because it's like first come first serve for the early bird deadline. So like if somebody, of course, if it's like not too competitive, if you have applied early, chances are you will be hearing back early. December 15 is the regular deadline. You will be hearing back anyways. But regarding if I can apply past the deadline, I'm not sure if the portal is still available. If the portal is still available, you may apply, but whether you're going to hear back or not, I wouldn't honestly know. So it's always good to apply within the application window. So I have never applied to places where the application window closed down because it's always going to be the people who have applied within the application window will get a preference over people who have applied later because like they will fill up seats based on the application window. If the seats are not filled up, if there are any vacant seats, they might A, reconsider you, B, they might reopen the portal and ask for further applications. But that's all that I can think of. Like it's not really bad applying outside the application window, but whether you'd be hearing back from them or not is another thing because some universities will have a second round of interview. So they would have it sometime towards the end of December or early Jan. So pretty much if you apply close to early Jan, you are already eliminated because you haven't been shortlisted for interviews. Does QS ranking matter for PhDs? I mean, does lower ranked university have this competition? QS ranking matters in general. It's not like the only thing which matters. Like I said, it's gonna be your PI first and university second. It's not that you have to go to Caltech, MIT all the time, but it also doesn't mean that you have to like choose a university which is ranked 1,000. So 1 to 500 is the range that I'd be looking for. And I don't think there is something like there's a surefire way to say that if it is lower ranked, the competition is less or something like that. Generally, you will be finding something called the acceptance rate on the website, or like if you Google any university, so say University at Buffalo acceptance rate, you will be seeing an acceptance rate of some percentage. That's the way I would like understand that. Well, it's a little harder to get, it's a little less harder to get, but there's nothing called it's going to be less competitive, of course.
Thank you so much, Anwita. Thanks a lot. I think the session was really wholesome, and the people who will watch the recording will find it so useful as well. Um, are there any other questions? Feel free to ask. Then, otherwise, we can end the meeting.
Yamina, can I talk to you for a minute, please? After
Yeah.
like meeting ends. Okay.
Sure, definitely.
Of course.
So, like, feel free to leave the meeting. Everyone else, like, and you can access all the resources on project. And do email us to the operations teams if you have any specific questions or you want to know. Like, we will be happy to help. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, yeah, I think everyone left the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, what's the student's name? Just let me see it once.